Have you ever felt that, despite your efforts, something invisible is holding you back? You work hard, you sacrifice, but the respect and opportunities you seek seem to slip through your hands. Pay close attention, because the greatest saboteur of your success might be something you use every day without realizing it: your own voice. There are phrases that, when spoken, act like slow poison, eroding your strength from the inside out, and today, we are going to expose them. Many men believe that words vanish into thin air, that what they say has no real consequences. They think speaking is just a release, a reflection of how they feel in the moment. But that is one of the most dangerous beliefs. I, Brian Tracy, learned that every word you speak is a tool. It can build trust or destroy it. It can open doors or shut them. It can lift you up or drag you down. What you say creates perceptions in others, and more importantly, it builds or destroys your own reputation. A single wrong phrase can erase years of effort, while the right word can create opportunities you never imagined. Success is not measured only by what you do, but also by what you choose to say. That is why there are things you must never say, because by saying them, you weaken yourself, lose credibility, and lock yourself in mediocrity. If you want respect, influence, and true success, you must learn to control your language. A disciplined man does not just govern his actions, he governs his words. Most men underestimate the power of words. They speak without thinking, react out of emotion, and vent with phrases they believe are harmless. Then they wonder why they lose respect, trust, and opportunities. Every word you say is a statement about who you are. Others judge you not only by how you act, but also by what you say. If your language reflects weakness, insecurity, or disorder, even if your actions try to prove otherwise, you have already lost ground. Words are windows into your character, and a man who wants to thrive must be aware that there are phrases that should never leave his lips. The first one is, "I can't." Saying "I can't" is sentencing yourself before you even try. It is a confession of defeat that programs you to live with limits. Every time you speak those two words, you are training your mind to give up, to accept barriers that may not even exist. A disciplined man never says "I can't." He asks, "How can I?" Change the question, change the attitude, change your destiny. The world always respects the one who seeks solutions, not the one who quits before starting. Another phrase you must never say is, "It's not my fault." That excuse kills respect instantly. A man who avoids responsibility shows weakness. He may think he is protecting his image, but in reality, he is destroying it, because by blaming others, he declares that he has no control over his life. And if you have no control, how can you lead, prosper, or influence? Success requires complete ownership of your actions, of your achievements, and your mistakes. When you take responsibility, even for what did not go well, you gain credibility. Others know they can trust you. But when you shift the blame, you lose the one asset that is hardest to recover: trust. You must also remove from your vocabulary the phrase, "That's how it has always been." Saying this is an excuse for mediocrity. It chains you to routine with no room for improvement. It is the fastest way to show you have no ambition or openness to change. The man who says, "That's how it has always been," declares that he prefers to stay in the familiar, even if it is bad, rather than risk growth. That phrase is the seal of conformity. A man who wants respect and success must never use it. Instead, train your mind to ask, "How can I make it better?" The one who seeks to improve evolves. The one who resigns fades away. Finally, there is another phrase just as destructive, one that is not worth speaking. Saying it is admitting you have no vision. It is giving up before understanding the value of what you could achieve. A man who dismisses opportunities with those words shows that he lives guided by comfort, not by discipline, because often what is most valuable is precisely what requires the most effort. Success never comes wrapped in ease. It comes wrapped in challenges. The one who says it is not worth it is declaring himself incapable of carrying those challenges. That mindset condemns him to remain small. Control your words as you control your actions, because what you say today can open doors tomorrow or close them forever. Every phrase is a seed, and you choose whether to plant seeds of power or defeat. A disciplined man never speaks words that chain him. He only uses words that strengthen him. That difference separates him from the crowd that speaks without thought and brings him closer to the small circle of men who inspire, lead, and prosper. The power of your words does not end with what others hear. It also shapes what you believe about yourself. When you repeat phrases of weakness, even as a joke or in a moment of frustration, your mind records them as truths, and over time, those truths become the foundation of your identity. That is why there are things you must never allow yourself to say, because what you speak programs you. A man who seeks respect and greatness cannot afford to plant seeds of defeat within himself. You must use your words as tools for building, not as weapons that destroy you. One phrase that should never leave your mouth is "it is impossible." Every time you say it, you place a mental wall that stops you before you even begin. History is full of examples of men who achieved what everyone else called impossible. Electricity, flight, the technology we use today were once considered fantasies. If someone had accepted those two words, nothing would have changed. By saying "it is impossible," you are confessing that your vision is weak. The man who prospers never says "it is impossible." He says, "What do I need to make it possible?" That is the difference between mediocrity and greatness. Another forbidden phrase is "that is not fair." Life is not fair, it never will be. Complaining about injustice locks you into victimhood. A man who repeats "it is not fair" is declaring that he needs perfect conditions to act, and those conditions will never come. Respect is earned when you face life as it is, not as you wish it to be. When instead of complaining, you look for an advantage. When you turn obstacles into opportunities. Complaining is the language of the weak. Adaptation is the language of the strong. You must also avoid the phrase, "I already know everything." This is one of the most destructive because it shuts the door to learning. The man who believes he is complete stops growing, and when he stops growing, he begins to die slowly. Saying "I already know" reflects a fragile ego, not true strength. A disciplined man never stops learning because he understands that every day there is something new that can make him better. The humility to listen, to study, to improve is what keeps him relevant and powerful. The one who says "I already know" freezes, and the world moves past him. Finally, never speak the phrase "I always fail." That statement is devastating because it becomes a prophecy. When your mind hears that affirmation, it begins to look for proof in every stumble and turns each attempt into evidence that you are right, reinforcing a cycle of defeat. A disciplined man never says "I always fail." He can acknowledge mistakes, yes, but always with the conviction to learn. Each one brings you closer to your goal or pushes you farther away. A man who wants respect and abundance must guard what comes out of his mouth with the same firmness with which he guards his actions, because his entire life is a reflection of what he allows himself to say. A man who does not control his words ends up a slave to his own tongue. He may work hard, be intelligent, even talented, but a single careless phrase can destroy the credibility that took him years to build. That is why he must understand there are expressions that should never leave his lips, because every time he speaks them, he erodes his respect and feeds a weak identity. Success is not measured only by what you achieve, but also by what you choose to keep silent. Naming what is destructive is a form of discipline that separates you from those who speak without thought. One of those phrases you must never speak is "I am not enough." You may think it in silence. You may say it in moments of frustration, but turning it into spoken words reinforces it in your mind and transmits it to others. Every time you say it, you are confessing insecurity, and insecurity smells like weakness. Others sense that fragility and treat you accordingly. If you want respect, you must forbid yourself from declaring that you are not enough. Even when you doubt, affirm the opposite. "I am capable. I am prepared. I can learn what I lack." The mind responds to what it hears from your own voice. Another dangerous phrase is, "That is not my problem." With those words, you strip away responsibility and make yourself expendable. Men who say, "That is not my problem," never become leaders because they prove they only think of themselves. But success and influence come to those who take on more than what is required, to those who solve problems even when they were not asked, to those who add value in every situation. The difference between a mediocre man and a leader lies in this attitude. The mediocre man avoids. The leader takes ownership. Never allow yourself to walk away from a challenge with that phrase in your mouth. You must also avoid saying, "That is just who I am. I will not change." This statement is a wall that blocks growth. It is the language of conformists, of those who prefer to keep their flaws rather than make the effort to transform them. The man who wants to prosper never justifies his limitations. He faces them and overcomes them. Saying "that is just who I am" is accepting mediocrity as destiny. Discipline demands that you say, "I can change, I can improve, I can evolve." That mindset keeps you moving and opens doors that conformists will never cross. Finally, you must remove from your vocabulary the phrase "I do not have time." This is one of the most common and destructive excuses, because the truth is that everyone has the same time 24 hours a day. The difference is in how they manage it. Saying "I do not have time" is confessing that you do not know how to organize yourself, that you do not control your schedule, that you have allowed the urgent to rule over the important. A disciplined man never says he does not have time. He says, "I am not prioritizing it." Inside that phrase lies the key. Controlling your priorities is what determines your results. Each of these phrases is a silent poison. When you speak them, you weaken your character and reduce your credibility. That is why you must guard them with the same intensity with which you protect your habits, because the words you speak end up shaping the life you live. If you learn to keep silent about what limits you and speak only what strengthens you, you will build a solid reputation, a firm identity, and a destiny far greater than you ever imagined. A man who aspires to grow must learn to close the door to certain words, because every phrase spoken without thought chains him to a smaller life than the one he deserves. You cannot proclaim yourself strong and at the same time repeat phrases of weakness. You cannot call yourself disciplined while justifying your mistakes with empty excuses. Your words must align with the identity you want to build. If you want respect, success, and abundance, you must recognize which expressions destroy your influence and remove them completely from your life. One of them is, "It is too late for me." Nothing can be more self-destructive than condemning yourself with that sentence. Saying it is confessing resignation, accepting that there will be no growth, that everything is over. And as long as you repeat those words, your mind will stop looking for paths because it has already accepted there are none. A disciplined man never speaks of it being too late. He understands that as long as you breathe, you can rise, learn, improve, and begin again. Success is not measured by age, it is measured by will. Another phrase you must eliminate is, "That is not for people like me." Every time you say it, you are declaring that you belong to a lower category, that there are things reserved for others, and that you will never be able to reach them. Those words hold a belief in scarcity that condemns you to live limited. The man who prospers never places himself in that cage. He declares that everything that exists is available to the one who has discipline, character, and persistence, because success does not discriminate. It follows the man who works for it, not the one who excludes himself with words of defeat. You must also forbid yourself from saying, "It is not worth trying." That is the voice of cowardice disguised as logic. When you speak it, what you are really saying is, "I do not want to make the effort." What is truly not worth it is standing still, because every attempt, even when it fails, strengthens your character. Every time you tell yourself it is not worth it, you are stealing a lesson from yourself, stealing an opportunity to grow. A disciplined man understands that it is always worth trying, because the attempt makes him stronger, wiser, and more capable. And here I want to pause to remind you of something important. If this message resonates with you, subscribe to this channel. This is a space where we train the mind and the character to reach far beyond what the average person believes possible. And I want to ask you a question that invites you to answer in the comments. Which negative phrase do you feel you repeat to yourself the most and that you need to eliminate immediately? Recognizing it is the first step to regaining power over your words. Remember that the phrases you repeat become beliefs, and beliefs become actions. Every word is like an order your mind carries out. If you speak defeat, you will live defeat. If you speak power, you will live power. A disciplined man does not allow himself the luxury of speaking against himself. He trains to use words as steps, not as chains. That verbal discipline is what places him at a level of respect and strength that others will never reach. The words you speak are not innocent. They are decrees your mind records as truths. Every time you speak, you are building or destroying something inside yourself and in your surroundings. That is why, if you truly want to become a respected and successful man, you must cut out from the root the phrases that reduce you, that weaken you, that present you as someone without control, because life returns exactly the energy you project, and that energy travels first in the form of words. One of the most damaging phrases is, "I am not lucky." Every time you speak it, you train yourself to surrender, because behind those three words lies a hidden message. My life does not depend on me. It depends on chance. That mindset turns you into a victim of circumstances and distances you from action. A disciplined man never talks about luck. He speaks about discipline, about work, about consistency. He understands that what others call luck is really the result of years of invisible effort. Every time you repeat, "I am not lucky," you are denying your own power. Another forbidden phrase is, "I do not care." It may seem small, but it reveals apathy and a lack of commitment. A man who says, "I do not care," loses respect instantly because he sends a message of indifference toward what surrounds him, and no one trusts someone indifference. Respect is built by showing interest, responsibility, and passion, even in what seems small. Saying, "I do not care," is shutting down your influence before it even begins. A disciplined man never uses it. Instead, he asks, "What can I learn or contribute here?" That question sets him apart. You must also avoid the phrase, "The same thing always happens to me." That is a statement of victimhood. It is accepting that your life is doomed to repeat cycles of failure. When you say it, you train your mind to confirm that supposed curse, and everything you experience afterward you interpret as proof that you were right. That phrase locks you into resignation. A disciplined man never accepts living trapped in a negative pattern. He recognizes mistakes, learns from them, and moves forward with greater strength. He replaces complaints with affirmations. Every day I learn and improve my results. That mindset drives him ahead instead of dragging him down. Finally, you must eliminate from your vocabulary the phrase, "That will not work for me." Speaking it is giving up in advance. It is clipping your own wings before you even try to fly. The man who says that shows that his confidence depends more on fear than on preparation. Instead of repeating that phrase, you must train your mind to say, "I will learn until I succeed." No one is born an expert. Everyone starts as a beginner. The difference lies in who quits with words of defeat and who holds on with words of determination. Control what comes out of your mouth with the same discipline you use to control your actions, because the phrases you speak today are the prophecy of what you will live tomorrow. A man who aspires to respect and abundance never allows himself the luxury of speaking against himself. He trains himself to speak like a leader, even while still building his path. With that habit, he turns every word into a step toward a greater life. The language you use every day is a mirror of your character. What you say reveals more clearly who you are than what you try to show through gestures or silence. And while you may think certain phrases are harmless, the truth is that every word you speak sends a direct message to the world and, most importantly, to yourself. If you want to become a man of respect, influence, and power, you must remove any words that project you as weak, negative, or defeated. Because discipline is not only trained through what you do, but also through what you allow to leave your mouth. One of those phrases you must never speak is, "It is not my fault, it is someone else's fault." That is the clearest act of weakness. You may even be right, but when you declare it out loud, you show that you have no control, that you need to point fingers instead of taking responsibility. Respect is built on the opposite, on men who say, yes, it happened under my watch and I will correct it. The difference between a leader and a mediocre man lies in that phrase, the mediocre blames, the leader assumes. Another destructive expression is, I always have bad luck. That statement becomes a prophecy. Every time you speak it, you train your mind to see only problems, to interpret every setback as proof that the world is against you. Once your mind believes it, you project it in every action. You stop taking risks, stop trying, stop seeking opportunities because you have already convinced yourself that it is not worth it. A disciplined man never speaks those words. He may acknowledge that things did not go well, but he always affirms, I will learn from this and come back stronger. That mental difference separates those who sink from those who rise. You must also erase from your vocabulary the phrase, that is just who I am and I will not change. That is the confession of a conformist. It is the language of someone who prefers to stay with what is familiar, even if it is bad, rather than make the effort to improve. No one will respect a man who justifies himself with those words, because they show he is more attached to comfort than to growth. A disciplined man never says, that is just who I am. He says, I am in constant improvement. That statement keeps him open to learning and allows him to evolve over time. Finally, always avoid the phrase, I am not good at that. Speaking it is setting an unnecessary limit. It is accepting defeat before even trying. That phrase trains your mind to close itself to possibilities, to avoid exploring paths that could transform your life. A man who seeks greatness never says, I am not good at it. He says, I will learn until I master it. Everyone who is now an expert was once a beginner. The difference is that they did not block themselves with words of defeat. Remember this, every phrase you speak becomes a silent command to your mind, and that command, repeated again and again, becomes identity. If your vocabulary is filled with excuses, you will live in excuses. If it is filled with affirmations of strength, you will live with strength. A disciplined man guards his words as carefully as he guards his time, because he knows that every careless word is a lost investment, and every well-chosen word is a seed of respect and abundance. A man who seeks respect and greatness must understand that words are never neutral. They are weapons or tools. With them, you can build trust, authority, and admiration, or you can destroy them all in seconds. Many times, opportunities are not lost because of lack of ability, but because of something said at the wrong moment. That is why there are phrases that should never leave your mouth, because each time you speak them, you lower yourself in front of others and in front of yourself. Mastering language is part of mastering life. One of those phrases is, that is not my responsibility. With those words, you place yourself in the category of mediocre men, those who avoid, who run, who prefer comfort over accountability. A leader never walks away, even if the problem is not his. Taking ownership and helping to solve what is in front of you makes you reliable, someone others will follow without hesitation. Another phrase you must erase from your vocabulary is, I am good for nothing. It may sound like a harmless release in moments of frustration, but it is a sentence that trains your mind to believe in its own uselessness. Once you believe it, you will act accordingly, settle for less, accept little, and sink into mediocrity. Respect begins with what you tell yourself, and no one will respect a man who declares himself incapable. If you feel weak, replace it with, I am learning, I am getting stronger, I will achieve it soon. The difference between staying down and rising again lies in those words. Equally devastating is the phrase, I was born this way and I will die this way. That declaration is a surrender to change, a pact with mediocrity. Life is meant for growth, for evolution, for transformation. To say you were born a certain way and will die the same is to accept that you have no control over your destiny, and that belief kills every attempt at improvement. A disciplined man never speaks that way. His language is about transformation, constant improvement, daily evolution. His words are, I can change, I can improve, I can become stronger. Finally, you must erase forever the phrase, I always make mistakes. Saying it traps you in a cycle of perpetual failure. Every error becomes proof of your supposed incapacity, and so you convince yourself that you cannot aim higher. But a strong man never declares defeat with his lips. He acknowledges a mistake but frames it differently. I learned something new. Now I am closer to getting it right. That change in declaration trains him to keep moving forward instead of stopping. Remember, others do not judge you only by your results. They also judge you by your words. And you program yourself by what you repeat. Every phrase is a prophecy. And if you want a future of respect, power, and abundance, you must guard every word that comes out of your mouth. A disciplined man does not speak to make excuses. He speaks to strengthen himself. He does not speak to justify himself. He speaks to lead, and that difference lifts him above the rest. A man who does not watch his words ends up weakening everything he builds with effort. He may have talent, work with discipline, and show results. But if his language reflects insecurity, complaint, or resignation, others will notice and his authority will collapse. That is why, if you want to become someone respected and trustworthy, you must forbid yourself phrases that reduce you and put you in the role of a victim, because every time you open your mouth, you reveal your mindset, and no one follows a man who speaks like someone defeated. One of the most destructive phrases you must never pronounce is, "It is not fair." This is the typical declaration of those who live in complaint. Life is not fair. It never has been. Believing it will be is a dangerous illusion. A man who repeats, "It is not fair," convinces himself that he needs perfect conditions to move forward, and those conditions do not exist. A disciplined man accepts life as it comes and finds advantage even in difficulty. While others sink in complaints, he grows stronger by facing reality. That mindset makes him reliable and powerful. Another forbidden phrase is, "I have no opportunities." Each time you say it, you train yourself to ignore the ones that already exist. The world is full of opportunities, but they do not always come disguised as ease. They often appear as challenges, as problems to solve, as work no one else wants to do. A man who says he has no opportunities is really saying he does not want to make the effort. Instead, the disciplined man repeats, "I create my opportunities." With that mindset, he sees possibilities where others see obstacles. You must also erase the phrase, "I already tried and it did not work." That expression ties you to failure as if it were final. A failed attempt does not mean it cannot be done. It means you have not yet found the right way. Every successful man has a history of failures behind him, but none allowed himself to declare out loud that it was no longer worth it. A disciplined man turns every stumble into learning and repeats with conviction, "If it failed, I will do it again, but better." That mindset separates him from the average man who gives up at the first obstacle. Finally, you must remove from your vocabulary the phrase, "It is not my fault," because blaming others is the cheapest excuse. Saying it declares that you have no control over your life. Respect is earned when you take responsibility, not when you avoid it. Even if you were not directly responsible, a strong man always asks himself, "What can I do to fix it?" That attitude makes him a leader. Excuses make you a slave. Remember, every word you speak reveals your character and programs your future. If you speak with complaints and excuses, you will live limited. If you speak with strength and responsibility, you will live in abundance. A disciplined man trains himself to stay silent about what chains him and to speak only what drives him forward. That difference, even if it seems small, places him at a level most will never reach, because respect is not demanded. It is earned through the power of your words. The words you pronounce are like invisible contracts with your future. Each time you say something with conviction, your mind records it as an order, and that order shapes your thoughts, emotions, and actions. That is why you must take extreme care with what you declare aloud. Some phrases may seem harmless, even normal, but in truth they are poison in disguise, and a man who aspires to greatness cannot afford to drink poison every day. Success demands discipline in language as well, because what you repeat with your mouth becomes the reality you live with your hands. One of those phrases you must never say is, "I am not good at anything." That is a death sentence for your confidence. No one is born an expert. Everything is learned, everything is trained. By repeating this phrase, you are declaring that you have no value, and once you believe it, you begin to act as if it were true. The respect of others begins with self-respect, and no one will respect a man who declares himself useless. Instead, you must affirm, I can learn anything I set my mind to. That mindset pushes you to improve instead of giving up. Another destructive expression is, there is no hope for me. With those words, you train yourself to accept a life of mediocrity. You set a ceiling and throw away the key. No one who says that achieves something great because they have already convinced themselves they cannot change. A disciplined man never gives up that way. Even with flaws, even when he fails, he always affirms, I can improve, I can transform, I can become stronger. That declaration keeps him moving and prevents him from getting trapped in resignation. You must also forbid yourself from saying, everyone is against me. That phrase is the voice of victimhood. When you say it, you place the whole world in the role of enemy and yourself in the role of helpless victim. But the truth is, no one prospers from that position. By repeating it, you give others power they should not have over your life. A disciplined man never speaks that way. He understands there may be obstacles, but he also understands that he has the power to overcome them. He declares, I can move forward despite difficulties. That is the difference between staying stuck and growing. Finally, always avoid saying, I have nothing to offer. That phrase holds the idea that your life has no value, and that is a dangerous lie. Every man has talents, experiences, and skills he can contribute. The problem is not the absence of value, it is the lack of discipline to discover and develop it. Saying, I have nothing to offer, turns off your potential. Saying, I can contribute and I am growing, turns it on. Your life is not measured by what you do not yet have, but by what you choose to work on. Remember, every word you speak to others or to yourself is a seed. Sow weakness, and you will harvest mediocrity. Sow strength, and you will harvest respect and abundance. That is why a disciplined man never allows himself to speak like someone defeated. His words are consistent with the greatness he is building, and that consistency is what separates you from those who settle and places you on the path of those who conquer. The last words you must erase forever from your vocabulary are those that, even if they seem small, condemn you to a life of mediocrity. They do not only destroy your reputation before others, they destroy something far more serious, your inner confidence. And when a man loses confidence in himself, he loses everything. It does not matter how much talent you have, how hard you work, or how many resources are at your disposal. If what you repeat are words of defeat, your mind will lead you to fail before you even try. That is why verbal discipline is an essential requirement for anyone who wants prosperity, respect, and abundance. One of the most toxic phrases you must never say is, it is not worth continuing. With those words, you close the door to every possibility of success. Men who achieve greatness fail more times than most people dare to start. Every failed attempt is part of the path, not the end. By saying it is not worth it, you are confessing that you would rather give up than learn. A disciplined man never declares that. He replaces it with, every attempt brings me closer to victory. That is the mindset that keeps him moving forward. Another phrase that destroys your strength is, I cannot change. Saying this is giving up on transformation. It is accepting that your flaws will rule you forever. No one respects a man who refuses to improve. Growth is an obligation, not an option. And even though change can be painful, the pain of transformation is always better than the pain of resignation. Each time you feel the temptation to repeat those words, remember, a disciplined man can reinvent himself as many times as necessary. You must also ban forever the phrase, I am a failure. That statement is not only false, it is a poison that paralyzes you. Failure is not an identity, it is an event, and events can always change. Every mistake is a lesson, every setback an opportunity to grow. A man who defines himself as a failure condemns himself to live as one. A man who defines himself as a learner prepares to rise again. The difference between the two lies in the words he chooses to pronounce. And the most dangerous of all is this. When those words leave your mouth, your mind stops looking for solutions. That declaration blinds you to every possibility, trains you to live without purpose, and makes you your own enemy. No disciplined man allows himself such a betrayal. His phrase must be, "My future depends on me, and I am building it with every decision I make today." That affirmation forces you to take control, to act with purpose, to keep hope alive through action. Remember with absolute clarity, your entire life is shaped by the words you repeat. What you declare aloud becomes what your mind obeys in silence. A man who seeks respect never allows himself the luxury of speaking against himself. Eliminate the language of defeat. Train your mouth to speak only words of power, and you will see how your character, your decisions, and your results begin to transform. Because success is not built only with actions, but also with words. When your words and your actions align in discipline, respect, abundance, and greatness become inevitable consequences. Knowledge without action is useless. Now that you know the words that sabotage you, you have a choice. Ignore this message and continue as always, or take control of your language and with it your destiny. If you are committed to forging the best version of yourself, I invite you to take the next step. Subscribe to this channel and join a community of men who strive for greatness. If this message brought you value, show it with a like. And to make sure you never miss the tools we will share, turn on the notification bell. Remember, a disciplined man not only governs his actions, he also governs his words. See you in the next video.